All right. So I think we are live. I got to get an intro thing again because it's been so long since I've done this that I didn't have an intro part, but I've got to get that. Hey, everybody. Hey, Twisted People. It's your girl here, Chauncey K. Robinson. And I am here with my lovely, lovely mama, Karen Robinson. How you doing, lady?
I'm doing fine.
Yeah, so we're talking Eve, season 3, episode 4 and 5. Um, wow. I was already excited for this season already, but I can honestly say that episode 4 and 5 just really shows us that we are in for one heck of a time, especially with things already being set up the way that they are. And so, but first and foremost, I want to say thank you to everyone who's watching live and those of you who are watching the replay. It's always appreciated. It's your girl here, Chauncey K. Robinson, Twisted CKR. And I love doing this live stream with my mama. We were away for a bit because Evil went on its, their season break. And now we're back. We did episodes 1 through 3 last week because we, had to play a little catch up because I was getting over the Rona. Still having a little bit of the brain fog, but we persevering. And today we're doing episode 4 and 5. So now for the weeks next, we'll be pretty much up to speed. So we'll be up to speed, thankfully. Knock on wood, God willing. And so speaking of God, there's a lot of talk of God and saints and demons and angels in these last 2 episodes. And I really, really appreciate that seems to be, I want to say that seems to be the kind of path the show is going on. And I really am digging that. And we seem to be digging more into what that means for David. A lot of the plot lines are just really coalescing really well. But first and foremost, we're gonna dive a little bit into episode 4. We're gonna really dive into episode 5 because I think we both feel like that was like the meatier episode in terms of a lot of things being revealed and things happening. But episode 4 was quite solid as well. But first and foremost, lady, what grade would you give episode 4?
I would give it an A. It was good.
Episode 4. So that episode 4 was the demon of the road. And I thought that was quite funny because my mama would know. We actually have family members who are truck drivers. Or a family member. My uncle, he's a truck driver. He drives trucks. And I've always thought truck driving is an interesting existence because you have to drive for long times on the road. You kind of have to be okay with being a solo person and being alert. And we all know how tough of a job that can be. Not we all know, but we all can sense. That's why many of us don't do it. But truck drivers, they deal with a lot of it. So I thought this was a very interesting plot line in terms of what was going on. Hey, Betty, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. Yes, I am feeling better, little by little. I still got a little bit of the brain fog going on occasionally, a little bit of the fatigue. More so, my sleep schedule has been thrown off because what the time mean during the Rona. But yeah. Hey, Ray, how's it going? How's it going? How you been? My condolences about Charmed. I heard it got canceled. I remember y'all asking me if I was going to cover that season. I just said I am staying away from that show, and the demise of the show has occurred. So, but yeah, Ray, how's it going? Hope everything's going well with you. Yeah, the twisted cat. I think you heard her in the background, the fluffy one, my middle fur child. Yeah, I know, Ray. Cry emojis. Pour one out for Charmed, man. I'll just say this. I probably will do a video about the cancellation and probably talk about my feelings on what went wrong and kind of my disappointment because we had a show that had women of color, particularly a black witch, and I was so excited for that, and they squandered it. And unfortunately, that's what we have to deal with. So I might do a little rant video about that in the coming weeks to finally get it off my chest about that. But I feel you. Hey, Josh. How's it going, Josh? Josh, my people, my quote person from Twitch. I know I haven't been on Twitch very much in the last couple of weeks. It's been nuts. The Rona took me out for a little bit, and then work. I'm clawing my way back over there, Josh. I'm clawing my way back over to, because we got to finish Dead Space. We got to finish Dead Space. If y'all don't know, I have a Twitch channel, a Twitch stream that I do. And basically we play some horror games, and we basically talk horror. So it's a cool way just to hang out with all of you and just talk about whatever you want to talk about and other stuff in particular to the genre. But we talk about all types of things there. And we were playing a game that Josh had recommended that he cashed his channel points in for, called Dead Space. So I still owe you Dead Space. I have not forgotten, and I really do enjoy the game. So I hope to finish it. So I'm glad to see you over here, Josh, and I hope you guys are enjoying Evil if you've been watching. Ray is saying, just when it got good, the second season was so good and great. Should have been follow-up to season 1. Twisted season 4 was so good. There was another. Yeah, I remember her. I felt like it was a little contrived how she came about. So I wasn't going to trust them again. Dead Space. Dead Space is a video game, and it's actually quite good. And I play it over on Twitch, and so we play that over on Twitch. Today we're talking Evil though, and we're talking Evil episodes 4 and 5, and basically this show is so smart, y'all. I just honestly think this show is one of the smartest shows I have watched in a very long time. And on top of that, I'm not even just talking about a smart supernatural show. I just think it's a smart show in general, but it's definitely something that takes the supernatural to whole new heights in terms of the things that it talks about and what it incorporates in such a poignant way. Like, oh my gosh, I am just in awe of this show. It doesn't get talked about as much sometimes on the social media, although I'm pretty sure people are watching it because it does get, Paramount definitely pushes it out, and it's CBS, so people probably do watch it, but it's such a good show. And we're talking about episode 4 for a little bit, but then we're going to really dive deep into episode 5 because a lot of stuff happened in episode 5. But in episode 4, the Demon of the Road, Mom, you said that you gave it an A. I definitely give it an A. I want to say as an episode, before I saw episode 5, it would be an A. Now that I've seen episode 5, I'm kind of like maybe a B+. But that's not because I thought it was bad. Like, it's more so comparatively speaking. Because I'm like, this is their A+ game. Episode 5 was A+ game. So maybe episode 4 is like an A.
Yeah, because it was good. I mean, especially with the part when he was running from the demon.
Exactly. So basically, episode 4, I'm pretty sure if y'all hanging out, you probably watched it. With episode 4, it was called The Demon of the Road, and it dealt with a truck driver and truck drivers who were hearing really crazy things on I-95. And, there were a couple other things going on. So let's talk about the main monster part. I want to say that this was one of my favorite episodes in the sense that we got back to the scare factor. This is the thing about Evil. It's a quirky show. It is. It has such a great way of going about things. But one of the things that I loved about season 1 is that it was genuinely scary. Like, there were episodes in season 1 where I genuinely would jump and be scared. And season 2 kept with the theme very well, but I will say there weren't as many truly terrifying episodes in season 2, like straight up horror, scary. And I thought episode 4 really got us back to the horror element that this show can have, and even though, yeah, I mean, even though it ended up not necessarily being a monster, it was a drone, although we find out that it was still connected to the whole demonology, the demon mapping, which was so crazy. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely just a scary, a creepy episode. I mean, the whole idea of driving down a dark road at night, I think that just creeps most people out because it's so crazy. The road is so scary as it is. So,
Yes.
um, just the idea that there was something following them was also just really, really creepy. So what we got was in that particular episode of that plot line of that case they were on, because they get cases. So let's talk about the case first. We meet Jackie, who has her husband. I believe his name was Jason. It's a whole thing of going on I-95, and basically we see the sigil. And I love that we're connecting back to the sigil, right? Like we found out about the sigil, I think about the end of season 1 going into season 2, or maybe even the beginning of season 2, where the sigils was basically the mapping of all the demon houses, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we go a bit more into that in episode 5 in such a great way because they're really building this up. But we're bringing back the whole thing about the sigils because I felt like the sigils, the symbols, kind of fell off for a little bit. I was like, what's going on with the sigils? It's kind of in the background. So now it's back in the forefront. And basically, it was a sigil, a demon house that was trying to get people to go crazy. And I guess my understanding, Ma, is that this sort of seems to deal with the idea of the demon houses seem to be about converting people to be followers of demons, of demon kingdoms, demon houses, right? That's what it seems to be shaping up. And then let us know in the
Yeah.
comments, in the chat, if you kind of think that's where it's going to. What do you think the end game is of this sigil thing, of the demon houses? I think it's finally starting to come more clear because I'm going to be honest with you, season 2 was awesome as standalone episodes, but I had no idea how all of it culminated. And I think we lost my mama for a second. Let's see if we can get her back. Where's she going? There she is. Hey, sorry, we lost you for a second, lady. And I think it was so interesting how it seems to be shaping up more. That it is very much a us versus them sort of a thing with the Friends of the Vatican who came in towards the end of the episode. So the Friends of the Vatican are very much aware of this, and they are very much an out and out war in a way with the demon houses. So I love that that finally became clear. What did you think of that, lady? I love that that finally became clear.
Yeah, especially when he said, "Here, do you want the honor of crossing this one out?"
Mm-hmm.
That's when he thought. He said, "You killed him." He said, "No, he shot himself." Because I think he didn't want
And do
nobody
you
to eat
believe
off his
that?
flesh or something like that.
Do you believe that? Do you think he shot himself, or do you think our
Well, I
dude
think they
was
killed him, but
lying?
let's
Okay.
be serious. We ain't gonna say that he shot himself, but they did that so nobody else won't eat him or whatever. I guess eat off his flesh,
Yeah.
like that guy, like that young man did the other one, because that house was saved by him.
Yeah.
So that's why he was telling him, you have to get rid of them before somebody eat on their flesh and take over the house.
And I love this little thing that they do where with each little flashback, they kind of remind us of things in case we forgot. So we saw the
Mhm.
thing of the dude who was thinking that the guy was a vampire from season 2 and how he ended up eating the body of the guy who was the head of the demon house.
Yeah.
And we all were wondering what is happening. What is going on with that feast that was happening? And then it kind of comes together that the way that demons take over is by eating. The way that demons become successors is they eat the flesh of their predecessor.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, an explanation. And I don't know if they heard us, y'all, because this was something we were very much wondering about in season 2. So many things were occurring, but we all were wondering what? Like, I don't know, like, especially with Cheryl's plotline, and we'll get to that in
Yeah.
the next fight. But we were all, I know I was, though, anyway. In season 2, I was very confused. things were happening, I was like, I don't know what this means. This is cool. This is great to watch. I don't know what it's leading up to. I don't know what this means and why it's significant. Why did that dude eat this body? What's happening here? So now we know the rules. The rule of the universe is being set that the way demon houses work is that the successor eats the body of the predecessor. And the Friends of the Vatican are about stopping the lineage, right? So they basically kill the person who's the head of the demon castle or demon house, and then they get rid of the body so that the demon house stops. No one gets to eat the flesh. They die off, and that's it. So they've been waging a war to get rid of the demon houses. So I thought it was so great that that finally came to fruition in terms of an explanation. So I was like, okay, now I can put this in the framework of the bigger plot line going on in the midst of all the great, they're awesome plot lines, the great subplot lines with our main characters. But now we have a bigger kind of world focus. The thing that gets me though is with the Friends of the Vatican, he had told David that one of the things was that they fought evil that was also non-supernatural. And that was interesting to me because now it seems that the Friends of the Vatican also are kind of admitting that they also fight the supernatural if we're to believe that they think the demon houses are supernatural.
Yes.
So I think that's interesting as well. And I think, like I said, at first I was a little hesitant about the whole Friends of the Vatican plot line because I was like, if this is going to be a way that David ends up being taken away from the trio, the wonderful trio that we have, I don't want it because I like when they work together. I didn't want him off on his own plot line in some other country or something like that on some other mission while they're doing this other stuff. So I'm glad that they're making it so that the Friends of the Vatican coalesce and come together with what our trio is doing. So, and I love that we finally got an explanation of what the bigger picture here is. Because by that explanation, we also got an explanation of what's good with Leland, right? Now we understand what the whole end game is, or more so anyway, kind of the end game. Leland's on the side of the demon house. Leland also seems to be the head of a demon house, which is, now that we know what this is about, we can kind of piece together from season 2 that he seems to have his own sigil too. And he seems to be the head of the demon house. And so, if he's the head of the demon house, then that means, that his thing is they're trying to make it so the demon houses convert people and win and basically keep going. So now we're putting this in the framework of a bigger picture. And I love that. I'm not one of those people that need a supernatural show where it's like such a whole war battle going on and it's all action and they're fighting against each other all the time. I love that Evil is a show that we can get the smaller stories in there too. I love that. And I love that all the smaller stories lead up to the bigger stories. So I'm not asking for that, but I did appreciate that we now have a better framework of what is actually happening. Like, what do these demon houses mean? And who's battling who? At least who's saying they're battling who, right? So with that said, Ma, are you still kind of, because I remember last time you were saying you don't really trust the Friends of the Vatican organization yet. Are you kind of on the fence still, or what do you think? And let me know, y'all, in the chat. Let us know in the chat.
I think they're gonna let David do all the work. I don't know. It's just something about that. They want to be hush hush, but they want David to know more of it. But somehow, I just figure this way. It's he's giving him some, and then he's keeping some stuff from him because they haven't brought back up the girl again. Did y'all find her? Did y'all get to
Grace.
her?
Yeah, they mentioned Grace Ling, and we don't know yet. We don't know where that. But we're kind of also seeing how Evil likes to play the long game with us, and I think I can finally accept that about them. Where it's like they won't give you all the answers in one episode. It'll be like, okay, this happened. Keep that in mind because we're going to come back to it. That's
Yeah.
the way this show works. And they're showing us that this season. They laid a lot of groundwork in season 1 or 2, which is why I say this show is so smart. Because they laid a lot of groundwork in season 1 and 2. And now a lot of that is coming back in such a significant way that you're just like, wow, they really mapped out this show, because all of this is making sense of how they did things and where it ended up leading to. But it is
Mhm.
definitely a show that if you are someone where you want a lot of the answers in each episode, you will get frustrated, because it'll be like, okay, they mentioned Grace in episode 3 of this season. When is the next time we might hear about her? We might not hear
Yeah.
about her till the season finale, right? Who knows with this show? They'll mention something and then it'll be like, okay, now for this thing you need to pay attention to for now, you know? And I'm not sure. I feel like with the Friends of the Vatican, my interpretation of them is David has a certain way about him, right? I love David. David's one of my fave characters on the show as well. All of them are. David, Ben, and Kristen, my fave trio on TV. Um, but he does have an idea of you shouldn't kill people. You shouldn't do things like that. Funny enough, he's still, in love with a woman who totally committed murder. But his thing, because Kristen did kill somebody, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny because David is very much like kind of trying to be the straight and narrow, like no, you don't kill people and stuff. I feel like the Friends of the Vatican are kind of like, listen, we gotta do what we gotta do. These people are gonna kill these people, and they're doing all types of crazy stuff. We gotta fight fire with fire, and
Yeah.
the way to protect certain things, we gotta do what we gotta do. So for that, I don't condemn them. If it was just on the strength alone that they kill the heads of the houses, I'm not going to condemn them and say I don't trust them for that reason. Because even if they did end up killing that guy was driving other people to be
Yeah.
hurt, kill people. So I can't really be too sad about that. I mean, would I rather that they maybe take the guy and like hold him in some facility where all of them are held as prisoners of the Vatican or some of the Friends of the Vatican, where they just can't get consumed by the next person? Sure, that would be more humane. But we're dealing with demons who are about hurting other people, and usually the whole idea is that you vanquish a demon. Maybe that's something we have to rethink about with a show like this. David seems to be against it, but I'm not condemning them yet. I'm on the fence about the Friends of the Vatican only because I think maybe they might. The only way I would start side eyeing them is if we find out they're not being completely honest with David. Like they tell him one thing and then it turned out to be another thing. That's when I'd be like, okay, what are they on about? You know what I mean? So still on that with them. I did find, was there a part in the episode that made you jump a little, Ma? Of anything in episode 4? Was there anything that like really creeped you out in episode 4?
Yeah. When David saw the well, I know when he hit something, I said, okay, maybe this did. But then when he went over, no, but no, what got me the most is what did what's her name see too? She saw something in those bushes too.
She did, and I don't know what she saw. That was
Because
the
they didn't
creepy
show. I
thing.
mean, I'm trying to figure what did she say? Let's get in the car real
She was
quick.
like, "Let's go."
Yeah,
It
let's
looked
go.
like a shape of a. I don't know if that was a house or what. I don't know what she saw. She
I
didn't
don't
tell
know
them
either.
anything. She was just
She
creeped
didn't
out.
tell him nothing. Now when David, he thought he hit something when he got out and he went there. Then I figured, okay, maybe he hit something. Then when I saw what made me jump is when he saw the
Yes, it was like, oh
and
my
he's
god.
looking. They looking at each other like because he's eating something. Then he's looking at David like.
Mm-hmm.
And and the funny part was when he decided that wait a minute, he disturbed me. Let me fly after. He said, "Oh," and then he started running.
And the funny thing was, it was like a standoff because I'm like, oh my gosh, get your keys, David, because you're like, oh no, because he's like, I gotta get my keys, I gotta go. Say hi, Pato. Pato heard everyone talking. She always comes up to me, y'all, when my mom is talking. It's just something about her wanting the attention. Yeah, yeah. My cat wants to join the discussion. Promethean Flame. Yeah. Say hi, Pato. You heard her? She said hi. Or she said, get off me. Yeah, she missed. Yeah, when my mom comes to visit, usually around her B-Day month when my mom comes to visit. But it's usually the oldest cat, my eldest cat, Elliot, that sticks close to my mom. Pato just kind of comes around her a little bit. You
Yeah.
know. Hey, Promethean, how's it going? How's your Tuesday? Let me
But
know
you
how
know,
you're feeling evil so far. We're talking episode 4 and 5. We're doing a briefer one of episode 4 because we really want to dive in episode 5, but there were some significant ones, so we're kind of talking about it a little bit. What are you about to say, Mom?
but I was gonna say what it was the like I said, what made me but it had me laughing too when they both looked at each other. And I guess he said, "Wait a minute." I guess the
The
monster said,
demon was
"Wait a
like,
minute, I'm bigger.
I'm going to go after you. And
Yeah, I'm
the
going after
runoff,
you."
that was just such, and we'll talk about that in a second. For me, the creepiest moment was the radio. There's just something about sound for me that's such a
Ooh.
thing. And when they were driving and it went to 666 AM radio, I was creeped out by that. The sound was so jarring. And I was just like, you know what I mean? I was like, okay, this is creepy. Because I couldn't imagine if I was listening to something um
And a scream came through there.
yeah, and I would freak out because that would just freak me out. Yeah. Prometheus saying they like the show so far. Oh, cooking dinner, we love it. And agree that with earlier that there seemed to be a lack of bro. Yeah, I just feel like it's just like yeah, exactly. I'm hoping more people catch on, even though I don't want to act like. See, that's the issue when you go off of social media. You think, oh, no one's talking about it on social media, so maybe people watch it. But I think people do watch it. I think there's just that silent majority of people who are just not on the Twitter webs and all that stuff, so they don't come on to talk about it and everything. But it's such a good show, and
It
oh my
is.
gosh, I need season 4 already. I need them to already announce that they're having season 4 because I'd be so disappointed if we don't get it. But yeah. So speaking of David, Mom, and we'll talk about him more in the. Well, actually, we should talk about him in connection episode 5. So let's focus on episode 4, and then I'll connect what happened because what happens to him in episode 4 actually connects to episode 5. So we'll have that as
Yeah,
one
it
bigger one.
do.
I'm just trying to see if there was anything specific to anything else specific to episode 4 that we can't touch on in episode 5 as well. Kristen Sasha Fierce era. Uh, she is so funny. I just genuinely love Kristen's character as well. Her kooky self. She's just I appreciated the whole Sasha Fierce stuff. I appreciated uh her having to deal with the stuff with Andy. I think once again it shows the disconnect literally between them, you know. And it was interesting. The guy from the time she punched him out in the grocery store came back and wanted a thing, and I just felt like, did you think it was right that she apologized, Ma? What did you think about that when she apologized?
Well, why? I mean, you come to my house, have it in my face. No, did I
How do you
apologize
even
when I
find out where
didn't?
she lived? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah. I was
Anyway,
saying, no, I'm not. Because do you want me to do it again? I
yeah.
mean, really, I mean, come on. You know what you did. You know what you caught me. So why am I apologizing?
Yeah, I thought it was a very and this is one of the I think great things about this show that it tends to touch on social issues interlinked with the supernatural and the faith based stuff and things
Yeah.
like that. And it brought up the question of Kristen being a woman and kind of trying to deal with what does that mean? What does strength look like as a woman? And yes, Kristen is very funny. Like, what does strength mean as a woman? And when do women start to kind of defer to men in a patriarchal society? And I'm not debating with anyone on whether or not this is a patriarchal society because it is. Let's just be honest. I'm gonna get on my soapbox for that for a second. But and how there's just kind of this thing, and Christian brought up something like when girls hit puberty and boys hit puberty, there's this thing of at first girls tend to be very outgoing, we take up a lot of space, and then slowly but surely society can sometimes teach us to start to uh shrink ourselves more and more to
Mm-hmm.
be more to be smaller, to be more demure, to not push ourselves as much. And so I thought that was very interesting because I think that's something that I think being a woman in society, I think many women can relate to, of what that looks like. And what does it look like if you do too much? Can it be too much? I thought it was funny that she had her whole Sasha Fierce thing, and people were like, "You're dressed tough." I thought it was such a funny sequence, but it actually really made a lot of sense too, though, because I was like, it's funny. We can think that maybe she's being over the top in the way Kristen tends to get over the top, but it's like, if that was a guy character, would
It
we
would have
really
been
think
okay.
it would have been something like, oh, that's just him. He's such a hothead,
Yeah.
But because it was a woman character, it was like, what's she trying to do? What's she trying to do? So it was a very interesting thing. And I don't think she needed to apologize to the grocery store guy. He was in the wrong too. And I
He
just
was
think
in
it's
the
funny that,
wrong. So how can you come in my house and asking me to apologize?
and
But
I love,
then
yeah,
she
go
let
ahead.
herself think about, well, maybe I was wrong. See, she was doubting herself.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly, Promethean, like Promethean saying, I do like the commentary regarding patriarchal relations between men and women this season. Exactly, because there's a little bit more of that in the sister Andreas story, which we'll talk about that for episode 5, because it starts in episode 4, but we'll talk about it in the overall thing, because some of these plots kind of carry over. But exactly, there's just this dynamic, like her dynamic with the construction guy, him being like, is your husband around? And her being like, no. Like, you gotta talk. Now, I do think maybe Andy did probably agree with the guy or something, because Andy seems like he could be a little bit of a pushover. So Andy could have agreed with the guy that he would give the second check when it came to the plumbing. And maybe Andy just did not communicate that with Kristen. But then again, Andy didn't communicate with Kristen that he found a little head under their bed. So Andy has really bad communication skills, and we saw that this episode as well. So, but either way, I think I love that Kristen is kind of finding her strength, and she talked about season 2. She was like, how do I find my strength and not go off the deep end again? You know what I mean? Like, cause we know season 2, Kristen was wilding in season 2. And so she went off the deep end, and I'm glad it shows the growth of this character, because she could acknowledge that she went overboard in season 2. And she acknowledged it and saying, how do I still have strength and not go into the deep end? And I think that's something that's really an interesting way of going about what that character is trying to deal with this season, of finding herself but also not losing herself. It's that thin line, right? You try to find yourself, but you could lose yourself too. And so I think that was also very, very interesting for Christian. I love what they're doing with her this season in regards to that. Ray is saying, well, patriarchal relationship dynamics would reverberate through the series as it centers around a church, right? Which is by design a patriarchal institution. Oh, yes, yes, yes. The most powerful and old at that. Very, very true, Ray. And we get deeper into that when we get into Sister Andreas, our girl Sister Andrea's story. So with that, let's move over to episode 5, because there's a lot to kind of dig into a little bit with episode 5. Yes, it's not, I don't want to call it Supernatural X-Files, but it has that outline of it. But yes, they kind of find things and try to figure out whether or not it's supernatural or not, just like X-Files try to figure out if it was extraterrestrial or not. I will say this show does a lot better though in the interweaving of social commentary and getting a little deeper into the backstory of the characters, because as we know with the X-Files, you didn't know a lot about Mulder and Scully's backstory until later seasons. And with this show, it's very much about showing the whole character, which really just makes for really a dynamic storytelling. And I highly recommend it. You should be watching this show if you're not, y'all. Okay, so episode 5 was the Angel of Warning, right? And oh my gosh, the opening of this was so funny because everyone thought David was a cop, which I thought was funny, which I don't know what was, and for people who watched him when he was on Luke Cage, the actor, was
Yeah,
Luke Cage a cop? I think Luke Cage was a cop, wasn't he? Or wasn't he? What was Luke Cage?
I
I thought
think
he
he
was
was
a
a
cop.
cop.
And I don't know if that was a throwback to kind of like a throwback to the fact that he used to be Luke Cage, that they were like, oh yeah, everyone thinks you're a cop, like, or something like that. I just thought that was funny that they all kept thinking he was a cop. Oh, an ex-con. Okay, so he wasn't a cop. I just thought that was a
Oh,
funny
he was
dynamic.
ex-con.
He was ex-con in Luke Cage. I didn't watch Luke Cage. It's not one of my fave shows, so it wasn't one of my faves. Promethean saying, yes, I think it makes the sister Andrea's relationship with the church complicated. I guess she sees the church as access to her relationship with God, but the mostly men clearly want her out. Exactly. For a lot of reasons, which we got to dive into. But I just thought it was funny in the opening where everyone's like, everyone thinks you're a cop. Everyone thinks you're a cop. And it was so funny. It was so funny because it also is a throwback to what the friend of the Vatican told him, which was you need to be carrying your collar with you all the time, because he was like, I was called out of bed, and it was like you need to. So he had to end up putting a piece of paper there,
That's
and it was
what
like,
I did.
David, you got to start carrying your collar. Everyone thinks you're a cop. Hey Tom, how's it going? Yeah, thanks for catching it live. Thanks for joining us. Let me see what you're saying. Uh, I mean, I talked about Andy flushed down toilet, whatever happened with that. Exactly. No, we were just we're talking about it. We were talking briefly about episode 4, and then I kind of and now we're and because all of these plot lines are so connected and carried over to episode 5, we're kind of talking about all of it. So feel free
Yeah,
to bring up whatever. But yes, we talked about the communication issue between Kristen and Andy. Because even in episode 4, where they were talking on the FaceTime, he couldn't talk to her because there was so much disconnect or whatever like that. But once again, he never told her about the severed head. And that's what made me wonder if he had even took the time to tell her about possibly the construction guy might have made the agreement with Andy about getting the second check. But the thing is, Andy might not have even told Kristen. Knowing Andy, I almost kind of thought that. I'm like, knowing Andy, he probably did agree with that guy and just didn't tell Kristen because he's not good at communication. So more than likely, Kristen done bullied that guy out of his second check. But you know what I mean?
she
What
started
you
breaking
gonna do?
it. Okay, okay.
And
I think
I'm
it's
like,
so
well,
crazy.
the one I thought was, I bet you Andy probably did make that agreement, but because Andy has a tendency not to tell Kristen things that he needs to tell her, that's what we
He's
got,
the man of the house.
right? And I was just like, ugh. I was like, he probably did tell her, did tell him that. So, so basically, Tom is saying yes. I feel like whenever they call on the trip as pre-recorded, he probably is. I wonder that too, because there's hints that something's going on, and we'll talk about that, Tom. I feel like there's hints of something like that going on with what Cheryl sort of mentioned to Kristen this episode. So let's get into this episode, right? Episode 5, right? But feel free to talk about things from episode 4 if they connect and things like that, because it's all connecting, which we are loving this season, and everything is connecting. So basically, there was a gas fire or gas explosion that happened, and basically, there was perhaps a saint. There was perhaps a saint, and that was leading people out with a lamb. And it was really interesting. And what ends up happening is that the church wants to believe that this is a Sicilian nun who died from the 1900s who used to take care of lambs. And they want to see if perhaps they want to see if perhaps that the people saw this woman, right? They really want this to be this woman. What ends up happening is one of the women, who happens to be a black woman, she says, oh, who's that? Now they all are drawing the same person on a white paper, so there's never any talk of race or anything. And the woman's like, oh, that's not her, because the one who helped me out was a black woman. so now it descends into, David tells Monsieur this, and it's kind of like the church is like, anybody else saw anything?
Well,
AKA,
wait a minute. He said it was a Sicilian.
that's who they were trying to get. The
Don't they know
church,
Sicilians are darker people?
I don't know about all that. They had a picture of her, and she was light skinned in the
Well, then
picture.
they made them light skin, but Sicilian blonde.
But I think that what they're trying to say, this woman that they think is supposed to be the saint was white. And like
Yeah.
basically the one of the survivors is basically saying, no, it was a black woman. Now the other two real survivors basically were like, they never mentioned the race, because, and I understand that, because it's kind of like, this person saved my life. I'm not thinking about whether or not they were black. But then again, I would be probably thinking that, because race is such a thing for, if you are person of color in this society, it has a tendency to be in the forefront of your brain, because it's such a society that uh, you can't help but think about it in many situations as a person of color, particularly as black people, right? And so it was funny because Monsieur says to them, well, wouldn't the others have mentioned it if they were black? And then he was like, well, the survivor you talked to, she was black, right? Maybe she was trying to make some kind of political statement, because, these days everyone tries to, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, oh my gosh. It was so funny, but it was so on point, because
Yeah, because David looked at him
like, what? Like, and he was like, what's the problem with there being a black saint? And, I think it really just opened up such an interesting aspect of the question of faith, right? The idea of the paintings and things that we see in the Catholic Church and a lot of other churches, of Jesus being blonde and blue eyed, even though in the Bible he is described as having copper colored, skin and hair of wool. Yet somehow they have him having this flow, and like the Bible seemingly makes it seem like Jesus had a fro, right? And I learned something new, that Saint Monica was a black saint. I did not know that. Did you know that, lady? And what do y'all think about that whole
I
discussion
didn't know
that
that.
I just thought that was so fast. I find religion and horror and religion in general very fascinating, to be honest. And I just thought that was such an interesting thing. Promethean saying, I wonder if we will see the lady that practiced Boudin again. Oh, yeah, that would be interesting if she came back for that. And you also said, Promethean, I am glad they talked about the races and anti-blackness inherent in ideas about good and evil. Exactly. And I thought, it's interesting, because the way evil kind of has been taking on the question of faith and things like that is, it makes us as the viewers wonder, okay, are they really seeing that, or is it in their mind, right? And we'll talk about that in connection to Sister Andrea and David's question of faith. But then it also talks about how we see religious aspects, right? Because David talks about, he's like, I had always seen these saints as white. And he's like, and then when I start thinking about her as black, she shows up to me as black. So does this mean this is all in my mind? Like, why is this being influenced in this way? And also we find out that when they try to push on the idea of this woman, particularly being maybe a black woman, the church wants to drop it. And I just thought that
I
was,
thought it was so messed up.
yes, I thought that was just typical, because we see that there are problems. Um, there are problems in the church, and as we know in real life, there are problems in religions of faith of all orders, because of men, not just, I don't say men, I mean humans in general are full of flaw. And so when you have humans that run organizations, they're not going to be perfect organizations, right?
And
And I think, the fact that they couldn't answer why there couldn't be a black saint was so typical. But it's the same reason why, even though the Bible says one thing about the way Jesus looks, they still are okay with putting up pictures in official places of Jesus looking completely different from that, right? Why is that? What is it about? Is there an inherent racism, you know, in in uh in the Catholic Church, right? And I think that's just such an interesting thing. Promethean is saying, yep, like a black saint can't be taken seriously. It's fabricated political nonsense. Right? Exactly. And it's like, what is that about? Right? Michael Damian in the chat is dropping some knowledge he found on Google of he also found out that there are African saints. And this is just a whole bunch of stuff, right? I never knew about that, right?
Me either.
That was Saint Monica. I want to know more about Saint Monica because it's true. I actually the picture that David pointed out, because I love art like that. We go to art shows and things like that. We go to museums, the Getty and things like that. And I kind of like the look of that sometimes. And it was so interesting because I remember I've seen that painting before, right? I saw the painting he pointed out. So when he turned it to the painting of what it actually was supposed to be, I was like, holy crap. Isn't it crazy how much we've been indoctrinated, even as people of color, right? When David was talking about the question of every time I've seen a demon, I've always seen the demon as black, as a darker colored demon. Now, mind you, in the show, the demons have like bluish colored skin or whatever, but they're dark, right? They're dark, very dark features and things like that. And then the saints, the good people, are not that, you know. It was, but I will point out in the show that one time when David saw what supposedly might have been the angel Michael, that thing looked creepy. And and that was in season 2, if y'all remember. And I think that touched upon, as we talked about it in season 2, the question of how the angels were described as looking in the Old Testament, right? The angels in the original Testament had no race, because honestly, by our standards today, they look like monsters. And I always thought that was interesting that when David saw what was supposedly the angel Michael, it looked like a monster. And I was like, I would be so excited if they had angels looking like the Old Testament in this, and not any kind of humanoid thing, but like the monsters that they look like as described in the Old Testament, because that would just be so awesome. So I'm hoping they keep with that. But in this particular case, they're talking about the saints, and saints were humans, right? Who reach sainthood. And I do find it interesting that in Catholicism, if you have them tell it, it's interesting that in all the times of man, you would have it so that only white people did stuff that was of justifying of sainthood. That makes no sense. Right? Like, that makes no sense. And I agree, Josh, it is a very well constructed show. They really have thought about the way they want to present things. Promethean is saying, yep, the angel Michael was different, and biblical angels are very different. They make angels look like white models most of the time. Exactly. And most of the shows you see, they're usually white models. In newer stuff, they're usually like people of different colors, but they're in white robes, and they have the beautiful white feathers. And I just love if they take it so that the angels look like the angels from the First Testament, of the Old Testament, where they got like 20 eyes and stuff, and like just rings of fire around a block. And it's like, be not afraid. And it's like, well, how am I not supposed to be afraid of you looking like this? You're supposed to be an angel? You know what I mean? Exactly. Angels are supposedly terrifying looking, and they should be. If they got all those powers fighting demons and hell and everything, why would they be looking like us? You know, but it speaks once again, just like this episode spoke to the fact that we as humans, our minds have a tendency to insert ourselves into what we think other beings look like, right? It's the same question of extraterrestrials. Who's to say the extraterrestrials have humanoid things like we do? Why would they? You know, we know why we have it, because, I mean, depending on what you believe, you know, how we evolved or whatever like that, right? But why is there to think that in popular culture, you know, aliens are supposed to have a head, 2 eyes, even though they're big eyes, and hands, and they speak with a mouth? Why do we think that? They're from some other planet. Maybe they don't even need mouths. Maybe they don't even need heads. Maybe they're just limbs walking around. Maybe it's a hand. You know, it could be anything. But we as humans, we tend to insert humanoid-like things into things we don't understand. What would you agree with that, lady? Let me know if y'all agree. Josh is saying blasphemy. Yeah, I'm glad.
Wait. Who said that? Well, who was that? The father who kept saying blasphemy.
Oh yes, in the thing, blasphemy.
He kept saying that's blasphemy.
Yeah, that was funny with Sister Andrea. That was crazy. Yeah, the chances are very small because depending on the elements on the other planets, who's to say they need anything that we have of ourselves? Who's to say they needed to evolve to look like us? Maybe the condition on the other planet, they could look like snails for all we know. You know what I mean? They could look like giant snails. And they come here and they visit, and who knows how we treat them because they don't look like us. But we have a tendency in our minds, and maybe it's just our way as humans to want to relate to people, relate our world to ourselves, because how else are we able to understand it? Because if we remember back in the day, we used to think that that the earth was the center of the universe, right? We used to think everything revolved around the earth. We thought the sun revolved around the earth, right? Instead of the earth revolving around the sun. At one point in time, it was a blasphemy to say that the earth was just one of the other many planets that was revolving around the sun, because humans like to think we are the center. And sometimes that can be racialized too. I think in particular, if you think of the Catholicism and the white men who have been in power in Catholicism, I think there's a tendency to believe that the only people who are justified in their reasoning and stuff are white men, as we see with Sister Andrea. Uh, Sister, going into Sister Andrea's plot line, what did you think about that plot line, Ma? And what was going on with her? I wonder, do you think and let me know, y'all, do y'all think the show solidified your belief that Sister Andrea really sees things, or do you think maybe it's in her head too? What do you think? Because I was a little bit on the fence in certain cases. I was like, is she really seeing it? This show got me questioning what I'm seeing. Because I'm like, I don't know who's
Yeah,
real and who's
because
not.
I don't know. At the end, when she after David and everything, why did she saw there was a demon right there after David walked out? I wonder if it was that the same one that was with the sex game demon, because he was
No,
saying,
that the sex demon looked different. The sex demon had hair. He had like ears and stuff. This other demon, or maybe it was, because that demon could be stalking her, because it did have a crush on her.
yeah.
So
But sometimes, well, she be saying, like I said, when she be saying it, why did if she didn't see no demon? Like, wait a minute, hold on, I'll take that back. When David said there is a demon here, he sees them. He see the demon. He pointed to
for
Lynn.
that Leland, he was like, it's right here.
Right here. He pointed to him, But with sister, I don't know if she wanted him to. She told him don't really defend her or something like that. What you mean by that?
But that was for Kurt. That was for Kurt. That was going on with the psychiatrist, because David was. And yes, Ray, we do. We're talking actually about a very cool nun named Sister Andrea. She is on the show. She's one of my favorites. She's actually a actress who has been around for many years, and it's so great. She's doing such a great show. An older actress, so great on the show. They're giving her a lot to work with, so she's on the show, and basically when it came to that, Sister Andrea didn't want to throw the psychiatrist Kurt. We all love Kurt. I love Kurt, who was also Kristen's psychiatrist at some point. She didn't want to throw him under the bus because he was still trying to figure things out. And she was saying, she was like, he wasn't trying, unlike the other guys, the priest and everything were trying to force her. He was just telling the truth about her. He wasn't
Yeah,
trying to make her seem crazy. He was just saying what he was told. And
yeah,
so, and I like that she did that, because I didn't want him to be put in an awkward position, because I like that character, and I'm glad that she stopped David from doing that. To be honest, I don't know what y'all think in the chat, but I like that about the situation. I'm just trying to see what y'all are saying in the chat. Yes, I mean, I was highlighting. If sometimes if I don't read your thing and I'm highlighting it, that's just let you know that I saw it. And letting people who aren't in the live stream see what you guys are saying too. But Yeah. Yeah, y'all are talking about what we were talking about, how we as humans tend to insert ourselves in a lot of things and what we see humans as life forms and whether or not they should be life forms. Um, Tom makes a good point, actually. At one point, she had scars from the demon that would frequently visit her, the one she stabbed in the chest. Very, very true. I think you make a really good point there, Tom, because up to this point, I really was like, Sister Andrea is really seeing these things. I still believe that. I think what threw me off was the fact that she saw a demon hanging on Leland in, I think, episode 3. Right? It was episode 2 or episode 3. She saw a demon hanging on Leland, and I was wondering why Leland didn't see the demon. Like Leland didn't seem to see the demon with his arm over his shoulder. So I was like, does that say more about Leland or about her? Because I'm like, wouldn't Leland know that some demon is hanging on him like that? Like, wouldn't he know? Like, wouldn't he care? Wouldn't he acknowledge it? And I wonder, I mean, Leland clearly believes that she has some type of power because Leland wants her gone. So that makes me believe that Leland sees her, even if it's just on the strength of her faith alone, even if she ain't really seeing the demons, he doesn't like the fact that she has such strong conviction. So he wants to get her gone. But the fact that he's making such a point about it, I think is really important to point out. I was a little thrown off because with her discussion with David, because David was going through his issue of what he saw, because as we saw in episode 4, he saw a saint who got a demon away from him, and that came out of nowhere. And then he saw the saint again, but then later on he saw it as a black woman, and then he was like, was that my mind? Like, what is that? And Sister Andrea's response is, God changed it. Like her, and that seems to be her response to a lot of it sometimes, is that's God's doing, you know. And I can appreciate that, but at other times I'm like, okay, let's just say you don't have an answer. You know what I mean? Like maybe you just don't know, and that's okay too,
Just let it go. You know what I
you
mean?
know.
Hey,
And I really, really loved that moment at the end when David, we'll talk about what David did in defending her because that was amazing. But when she admits to David, she was like, I want to apologize for kind of dismissing your aspect about race when it came to faith and stuff. She was like, this is
mhm.
something I hadn't looked at it about before. And I think she understood that because as a woman, as a sister, as a nun, she has, and we've seen that since the introduction of her character. We've seen her grappling with men of the church who think she should just be mopping the floors and think the nuns should just be serving them food. You know what I mean? And even though she probably has more power than most of them in terms of her connection to the supernatural. And so I think in that moment when David was defending her and kind of threw in, please let the men talk about this, sister. I don't think David really meant to say that to her like that, but I think he was making a point to her to say, look at what's happening. You know what I mean? I can tell you as a man to sit down and shut up at
Yeah.
this moment. So I think she understood later to say, I'm sorry I didn't see it from the racial aspect because that's not something I see the world as. But she also made the connections, like just like you didn't see the world as from a woman's perspective of what I might deal with. And I thought that was really great on Sister Andrea's part because we talked about it last episode, last live stream, where as much as I love Sister Andrea, I think sometimes she's so strong in her ways that you can't tell her nothing. You know what I mean? It's like, nope, God did that. No, God did that. And there's no other way of looking at it. And I really appreciated that she could admit that even though she still believes, of course, God is involved, that maybe she should have seen it a little bit more from David's perspective as well. So that was a really great moment, a very great character moment. Yeah, Tom, I was just saying that, right? I really appreciated that they had that moment. This show has such wonderful characters. Like, I mean, this is a show where, you know, usually I watch shows and I can't stand most of the people. I usually should watch a show and I'm like, okay, this person I like, this person I like. Maybe I got like two. Sometimes it's just one person. And this is a show where I can genuinely say I really just like a majority of the people on there. And that's just so new for me. It's so refreshing to not be hating on anyone, any character on the show and be like, this character, you know? Uh, and so we had that going on with them. And so that also connected with David's crisis of faith, right? We thought we had a breakthrough in episode 4, right, Ma? Where we were like, oh my gosh, he finally had a vision again. He finally saw something. He saw a saint of some sort holding a sword, being there for him. Because as y'all remember in season 1, one of the issues that David was having was that the only way he seemingly thought he had visions was when he took drugs, right? He thought by eating the mushrooms he got, that would make him have hallucinations that were his way of talking to God. Because he said suddenly, actually, let me rephrase that. When his wife was passing away, he had visions. And then after she died, he stopped having visions. And so he started taking drugs to have those visions again. But then he started to wonder if they were real anymore. And so for a time, for the past couple of seasons, he's been questioning if God stopped talking to him. It's just been silent. And that's been a thing. And I love that they're remembering that about his character, right? That question of faith, even though he wants to stay faithful. And that is a question to ask, right? Can they win this fight through though, or is this the theme more about perseverance? No, I think they can win. I mean, there's definitely moments in this show where they can win. And they do. There's cases where they do win. Thomas, I actually dislike Leland and everything about him. Sorry, I'm sorry. Well, let me know, y'all. Do y'all agree with Tom? Am I wrong? I like Leland. I like Leland for what he represents. I'm glad they toned him down a little bit this season, and they're letting Cheryl shine through. And we got to talk about Cheryl. But I really like Leland for the most. I thought he was a little over the top in season 2. He was becoming a little OP for me, as in overpowered in terms of some of the stuff he was getting away with. But I think they've kind of gotten him in a good rhythm this season, to the point where I don't hate the bad guy, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't mind him, you know. Because I like not liking him, I guess is what I'm saying. I like not liking Leland as a person, but I love him as a character. Kind of like how I feel about Homelander in The Boys. Like, I like hating Homelander. I feel like the show wouldn't be a show without Homelander, even though I admit he's evil, right? For those who watch The Boys who get that reference. So Betty is saying, I enjoy when Leland is being tortured. That too. I love that. I love when Leland is getting his his butt handed to him. That's also another thing. So, Ma, what do you think about what David was saying? And let me know in the chat, y'all. What did you think about what David was saying about the fact that the saint changed races once he started thinking about race, and the question of whether or not he's really seeing this, or his faith and the visions really just our minds kind of equipping us with stuff?
But the last one that he saw, did she say run?
Well, I felt like that was just to open the show with, because there was supposed to be the angel warning.
I mean, I'm trying to say, what was trying to go for?
But that was why she was angel warning, so it was like run, like that kind of thing. Or do you think I feel like there's a mixture going on. I think sometimes it is in their minds. I think particularly for David, sometimes it is in his mind. But then I think there's other times when it's genuinely a vision. I think the question is, David's faith is sometimes shaken so that he can't be okay enough with the times when it's real. So he conflates it with the times that maybe it is in his mind. Because I do think he has real moments where he sees something. What do you think?
I think he do. I think he had those real moments. Especially when he was laying there. Then he started smiling. Then you saw the light come in.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing this. I think he be seeing for it, but he's not quite sure of it.
And I think that's mainly his issue. It's like, it's not so much that he's not seeing vision. I do think David
he see it, but he's not, like, when he's always asking, Sister Andrea, what, I see them, and she's trying to tell him, well, this is what God is trying to show you. But he said, but what if it's not God?
And I think that's the question, because we know in episode 1, at the end of episode 1, watch it back, y'all, there was some nuns standing in the room with one eye, when he
I
was.
didn't see that one. I gotta go
Did you
back.
go back? You still got to go back and watch it. There was a nun in a room with an eye patch as he screwed the demon version of Kristen, right? And the question is David seeing things? Because we know there are moments when in season 2 he had some visions. He had literal visions. Things were being shown to him. But I love the fact that they kind of play on the idea of he's wondering too. I mean, don't we all have those moments? If you've ever had an experience that wasn't in the psyche of the way society told you it was supposed to happen, whether it was a coincidence or whether, you wished or prayed for something and then it came true, or you asked for a number for the lottery, you had a dream and then the number came out, or I'm throwing that at my mom right there. She plays the lottery, guys, and she be winning because she be getting numbers for her dreams.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, no, I'm using it as an example. Like these things are happening, or the fact that you get a moment where you get a bad feeling about something, and you decide I'm not going to do that today, and then you find
Yeah.
out something happens, and it's like wow, in that moment you're like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And then I feel like when we move further away from it, we start to our adult indoctrinated brain comes in to kind of explain it away. We start to think, oh, that was a lucky break,
Scientifically,
or
like doing.
I just had intuition. It wasn't anything, from up above or whatever. I think that's what David deals with. It's like in that moment, you're like, wow, that's really a thing. That was a miracle, or my prayers were answered. And then later you're like, oh, well, maybe, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, or, things like that.
I don't think like that.
Well, of course you don't like that because you're one of the people, you believe in the faith, and I appreciate that about you, and I think it too. I often think that too. So Betty's saying I think his visions are real, but it's also frustrating for him not to know definitely. And isn't that the frustration? That's the frustration I get about some things. I'll just talk from my own perspective. I've had moments in life where something has happened, and I've been like, whoa. Like, when you get that moment, like, whoa, I can't even explain how that occurred or whatever, right? And in that moment, I'm like, whoa, I praise God. I'm like, da 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 da. And I still do. But then there are moments when I think back on those moments, I'm like, well, maybe that was just a coincidence, or maybe, I don't know. Because in those moments, when you think of something divine happening, you're like, wow, something divine. But then I think for me, you see things that are bad that happen, or you see what the world does and what humans do to each other. And you think, well, if there was something divine, why does this other stuff happen? Even if something good happened in that moment, it was divine, or something that was miraculous occurred that was just too good to just be a coincidence. Yeah, but if that's divine, how do you explain all this other stuff? You know what I mean? How do you explain this stuff? Like, who's doing that? And I think that's where the question of David's faith sometimes comes through too, where he wonders, this stuff is bad. Why does these things get to happen? But then I'm supposed to believe that there's some divine source that's supposed to be protecting people. Why does it choose who it protects? You know? And if you know what I mean? Let me know if I'm making sense about that. Because I feel like we as people, we do see miracles sometimes. We do see divine things, but then life happens and something bad happens, or we see something. And then we're like, well, if that's allowed to happen, maybe there isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you can't. I don't think you should look at it that way because,
Mm-hmm.
as we all know, there have been things that you thought would happen to a person, but it happens, and then something else is happening from somewhere else that's not good. But I always figured when one got lost, another was found. So if one thing got done, something else got taken.
Yeah, I think if we're supposed to believe that there's maybe there is a battle going on. Maybe that's how you explain the bad
Yeah.
things. Maybe there's a battle. Some things lose to one side, and some things, when something good happens, it loses to another.
I
But
think
I'm using that as a perspective, not to
yeah,
get
but
too
I think
deep with
we
it.
all go through a battle of something with good and evil. I always
Yeah,
got that.
and whether or not it's divine. And I think the show does a really good job of showing David's
Yes.
realistic, honestly, question of faith. Of, okay, I see all this divine thing, but did I really see a divine thing? Isn't that what most of our brains would do? Would any of us be that much different from David, or would we or do you think you'd be a Sister Andrea? You know, let me know in the chat, y'all. Do y'all think you'd be a Sister Andrea? You see these demons and you're just like, yeah, nah,
Nah,
that's
that's a,
real. That's a real demon right there. Or would you be like David? Like, I don't know about this. Maybe I'm having some kind of psychic, because nobody else is seeing this but me. What's going on? I don't know. I feel like I'd be more of a David sometimes. I feel like I'd want to be a Sister Andrea, but I feel like sometimes I'd be a David. What do you think, Ma? And hey, Felix, thanks for joining
I'll
us.
be with David because I don't want Andre's seeing too many. Shit, I mean, really, nah, that's okay.
No, but I'm saying not who you would choose, but if you saw things, would you be like Sister Andrea and believing that those are totally real, or would you be like David and questioning them?
Um,
I feel like you'd be a Sister Andrea. I feel like you'd be like, those are real. I see them. There's no doubt about it. Because you'd be playing that lottery and you'd be like, oh, I had a dream, and you look it up and you win. She be winning that lottery, y'all. Not that I don't want to, don't nobody try to kidnap my mom. We ain't rolling in dough like that, all right? But I'm just saying, she be winning the pick threes and pick fours occasionally. So Betty saying you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. That's true. But you also got to have those numbers. Um, was Betty saying, I think he knows fake Christian is definitely evil, so maybe that is leading to his question, the source of all. Yeah, it's like, who's sending him stuff? But maybe it's also the question, right? It's like that thing I like to sometimes say, and I got this from you, Ma, or just like people around us, where it was just like, not today, Satan, right? It's like, or the devil is a liar. Because sometimes when I think there's something bad happening, I don't really think that's like the divine taking a day off. I think that's evil trying evil. I think that's evil trying to change the scale. So I think, okay, there's a battle happening right now. Hopefully the good wins out. And I think that's the case. And sometimes, and it was very interesting because let's connect this to the fake survivor, right? The one that was one of Leland's people, the woman who pretended that she was in the building, but she wasn't.
yeah,
She
she
pretended she
wasn't.
got a call and she didn't. Who was trying to get David to doubt Sister Andrea, which is also poignant to point out because why does Leland want Sister Andrea away from David so much, right? That lets you know, once again, that Sister Andrea is probably the real deal. And, she said something that was very creepy, right? She's like, you ever wonder why people are more mean, why people shoot people and hurt people,
Hmm.
people are hitting each other on airplanes. And that was so poignant, right? Because is that not what we're dealing with right now, where everything seems like there's something bad going on? People have so much road rage in this world right now. It is crazy, right? That fake survivor was so crazy. It was so creepy. She played her role very well because when she switched, I was creeped out. And I was like, oh, wow. Once again, I love that they're bringing back the scare factor. They're bringing back the creep factor, right? And and when she was saying that, I got a chill because I was like, oh my gosh, because is that not how most of us feel right now? That stuff is just insane in our world. And she was like, you know why that's happening? That feeling of doom you have, because it's justified. It's because your side is losing. And she walks away. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I am creeped out. Because that was so relative to us now, but also it was like, I love that moment that there was a fake survivor. And it just goes back to how this show is one of those shows where it's just like, you got to question what you see. What did you think of that moment? And let me know, y'all, what did y'all think of that moment? Because I just thought that was perfect. I was like, there is a battle happening. There's a battle going on in this show. What did you think about that? The fake survivor and what she said.
Yeah, but she was trying to make him say, "Don't listen to the nun."
Well, that was her trying to get David,
To
to
yeah,
stay away from sin. That was Leland's doing. But I'm saying, what did you think of the moment she said the reason why all this is happening, why people are getting more angry and stuff, is because your side is losing. What did you think
yeah.
about that?
So what she's trying, I guess, to me, it was like saying a lot of people's not having faith in what they believe in,
Mm-hmm. And they're
and they
falling prey to the darker
they're
side.
not, yeah, but they just don't know. Nah, we got it's gonna show that faith is still there.
Yes, we can only pray and hope for that, and
Yes,
fight
that's
for
what
the
we can
good.
do for the
If you
good.
add, I'm a true believer that the way you do your part in society is by adding good vibes to the world. You don't got to be
Good
someone who's
thoughts and
like,
everything
I
else.
mean, if you want to be a big old hero too, that's awesome. If you want to go like try to aim for world peace and all that, that's great. But there are smaller things we all can do in the world that collectively come together. Smiling at someone, telling someone to have a good day, saying hello to someone, checking in on somebody, just being not a jerk to people out in the world. You never know the domino effect that's going to have. You never know
You can make a
who that's
person
going to
joyful
affect,
with goodness.
and
Yeah.
yeah, the ripple of good. And I think the more times people will do ripples of good, that combats that negative energy that other people might put out, because I feel
Okay.
like when you have a lot of negative stuff going on, it really does affect the world. And I think the little things add up, whether it's the little bad things or whether it's the little good things. Felix is saying, this scene made me wonder if the assessors have started a foul on Leland that they can present to the Cardinal. I wonder too, but I wonder if they would believe him. If they would, if the Cardinal would believe them, because I am still. It makes me feel some
How
type of
did they
way.
let him into the thing?
Well,
I'm not
he's a big
understanding that.
donator. He's a donator. He donates a lot of money, so he gets to
Oh,
have influence in the church. Once again, the church has its problems, right? You got people with real faith in the church, but the church is still an institution ran by humans. And because humans are not perfect, you're going to have imperfect organizations. And so Leland gets to have this influence, which at times I will say the influence that Leland gets to have with the Cardinal and stuff is annoying to me a little bit, because I feel like it's a little too convenient the way that he's in some of their ears. So I'm like, why does this guy get to just bring up charges against Sister Andrea and they get really adamant about getting her out? Like, just
it's
because
so
Leland said
strange.
that, and I know it ricocheted into her admitting that she saw a demon with one of the, fathers, and that was seen as blasphemy or whatever. But even then, the fact that they took it seriously even before she made that, it was like, why does he get so much influence? So that's a little too, that's a little much for me sometimes. But I do wonder if there's some way that they can get Leland not to have influence in the church anymore. Uh, and Sabetti is saying, well, the connection of the fake survivor leading called the church to cut ties. I wonder that too. And I hope, as Felix said too, I hope that they have some hard evidence that um that they can present and be like, he's trying to influence our cases. Maybe he shouldn't be allowed to have any influence or connection to us at the least, we can hope. I hope that's where it leads to at the end of this season, because I do think it's a little silly that he gets to come in and kind of influence all of them. And yes,
Okay.
Resident Evil, the season is coming out this week on Netflix. I do want to do a talk on that. I may do a live talking about the season, but I got to watch the season first, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, okay, let's get to Cheryl.
Cheryl. Let's get to Cheryl. All right. So Cheryl was the other big one of the day, and I got a wonderful picture uh,
Oh my
of
God.
this guy.
What
Y'all,
is he? Is he a
I
goat? A ram?
it looks to be a ram, kind of playing on the idea of what people tend to think the devil looks like, even though there's conflicting things about the devil, right? Because the devil was supposed to be the prettiest angel. So I don't know where they're going with the ram thing, but that's there. And Cheryl's thing was probably the highlight for me of episode 5. This was the highlight of this episode for me, was that whole situation. First and foremost, I love her new assistant, and I hope we get to see more of her new assistant and what ties she has, because the assistant really was helping her. And um I loved how the assistant told Leland, "Who are you?" Like, no, she writes my checks. Like, she's not trying to hear about Leland. You know what I mean? She's not trying. He's like, and like Leland was mad because he's like, "Where'd you put my spy on you?" And she's like, "I got rid of her," or whatever like that. So I love that whole thing. And I love that Cheryl actually has someone on her side in the office as well. And I love the whole thing of her getting in. Now, what we ended up getting was that Cheryl saw the boss, the manager, but he looked the way he looked. But what's also funny is no one else saw that, except Leland. Leland seemed to know what she saw. And he was like, oh, you saw, he's like, I know that face. You saw what I saw. And she was like, am I having a mental breakdown? He was like, welcome to the club. And that was so interesting to me because one, I was confused because I thought Cheryl knew about this stuff already. That's what confused me. I'm like, what did she think she was getting into that she was so thrown off by seeing him? And let me know if y'all thought the same thing, because I thought she was getting her blood transfused with weird stuff in season
Yeah.
two. All types of weird things was going on in season two, and it made it seem like she knew about the demon, the sigil map, and all of that. So it seemed like she was in on the evil stuff. But now, when she saw the guy and how he looked, she seemed genuinely surprised, and Leland welcomed her as though she had kind of like crossed the threshold and
Well, he
seeing
must have
what
stunk
he
real
really was.
bad.
Well, yes, but you get what I'm saying? She saw who he really was. And I was very confused about it because I was like, I thought she knew about this stuff already. Or maybe
Yeah.
she didn't know everything. What do you think? I was confused a little. I loved it. I loved her reaction. It was so funny. But I was also kind of like, what did she think she was getting into? That she didn't know that there was a dude that could look like that.
So wait a minute. Is this remember the same? Is this the same one that he cut up, or this is a whole new one?
Oh, this is a whole new guy. It seems like there's different dudes. This a whole new guy. The other guy was Leland's psychiatrist or whatever. This is a whole new person.
But he had the same thing that this one
They
had.
all have ram. They all look like kind of rams, which I think is kind of maybe
Yeah.
a thing of Satan, sort of a thing. Tom is saying it's because they shot that. It's because the shot they gave her when she was paralyzed in the house. See, that's what. And see, this was my issue with season two that really confused me. I didn't know, and I kept saying it in lives. I was like, I don't know what's happening with Cheryl. Is she aware of what's happening? Did she convert? Is she in on it? Because they started inserting stuff into her body, so it was kind of like, is she okay with it now? Or was she taken against her will? Like, I didn't get that. But then it started to seem like she was okay with it, that she was into the occult stuff. So I was confused. And so I was confused, like Sabeti is pointing out, exactly. You had a cannibalistic ritual, worship a creepy doll, but you're surprised to see a demon. I was just like, you know what I mean? I was kind of confused on why she was so surprised that she saw this guy. Because I'm like, weren't you in on this?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know. So maybe the people didn't see them. I mean, because when she was talking to the young guy, she was saying, "Well, do he look?" You know, and he looked at it. I was wondering, did he see what she saw?
No, he didn't. He said, he was like, people say he looks like Liam Neeson and da da da. So he clearly was like, he has two eyes. He looks like a regular person. Everyone else in the office thought he looked like a regular person. Cheryl and Leland seem to be the only two that see him for what he truly looks like. Tom is saying, I feel like Cheryl, they always start but never finish with her storyline. I feel like I agree with that to a certain degree. I feel like I love where her storyline is right now with her heading this business, and she seems to be okay with evil doings. She seems to not be conformed into this idea of good versus evil and things like that. She's just kind of like, I do what I want. This is what I'm doing. Screw it. And she also seemed to be okay with taking the probably the possible successor, because they talked about this in season two, that, and this is why I'm thinking, I feel like Cheryl is supposed to eventually be the successor of one of the sigils. So the question is she supposed to eventually be the head of a demon house, and will they have to kill her at some point, or will the Friends of the Vatican try to kill her? And also the question is, what does Cheryl think she's actually doing? You know what I mean? And maybe you're right. Maybe there is also there's some idea that, like, she wasn't completely sure what was happening, you know? But then it's also like, what was going on in season two? What was that whole transfusion? They never fully explained the transfusion thing. And I think they need to make that a little bit clearer, what the transfusion thing does to people. Does it change them? Does it make them more susceptible to stuff? What was a transfusion thing, and how did it get to that point? And did it have an effect on Cheryl? Because she seems to have her wits about her now, right? So if she has her wits about her, she seemed very surprised about the demon. So Betty is saying, but at the same time, I was pleasantly surprised. I feel like there's hope for Cheryl to turn to the good. I think so too, or some sort of goodness. I feel like Cheryl is just trying to be on top of her game. I think there's hope, but I think there's more of a chance that she's gonna take Leland out, and that she's going to ascend, and she might end up being something of a big bad. Because what we still don't have is Kristen doesn't know what her mom does. She said, "Oh, I think it's so great you have a new job and that you change your career at this age." And I thought that was great. They have a mother-daughter moment, but it was like, Kristen, do you really know what your mom does? Or are you just so caught up in everything else that you don't really ask her, like, what's really going on with her? Like, what is this about? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's just really weird. Because I remember when she first had sex with Leland in the first season, there was a whole bunch of fire and stuff around them. Did she not see that? So I'm wondering if maybe her eyes are now fully open to things she couldn't see before. But I really love where this plot line can go. And I'm just wondering, should I forget about the transfusion stuff of season 2 and just act like that didn't happen and she just kind of got caught up, so that this is just easier to kind of understand? Or are they going to explain it at some point?
Well, I hope they explain it.
And I agree with you, Betty. Cheryl loves her daughter and grandchildren. And I loved how she told Kristen, she was like, "Tell Andy I said hi." And I'm like, oh my gosh. Remember when she went in the kitchen, Mom? She's like, "Tell Andy I said hi on the way out." I'm like, oh my gosh, you got him sent off. I don't think Andy's coming back, y'all. Tom is saying, between her job and all them kids, Kristen don't have time to be worried about. Exactly. And so I think she's missing those smaller details of what her mom's really up to. But I really, really love the Cheryl plot line. And I wonder where it's going to go now that Cheryl sees what they're really about. And if she's really okay with that. And what does that mean? You know, is she fully indoctrinated now? And what does that mean? I want someone to have a real conversation with Cheryl. I think that's what I want. And I said this in season 2. I want someone to sit down with Cheryl and for us to see and for them to ask, Cheryl, what do you think is going on? Or something, just some kind of interesting way to do it so we can get a glimpse into what Cheryl thinks is happening. Because that was missing in season 2. And I feel like it's sort of, it's not missing anymore in season 3, but it kind of doesn't take into account what was happening with the transfusion in season 2. So I think they need to, either that needs to come back around for them to explain what that even is about, or something. Josh is saying, yes, looking forward to seeing what happens next. Love the anticipation. I truly do. I love this show. Everything really works. I will say so far, episode 5 was my favorite episode. It's the A+ so far of the season. What do you think, lady? And let me know in the comments in the chat, y'all, what y'all think.
I give it an A+ too. It was good.
It was my favorite episode of this season, especially with this handsome devil literally being walking around and how he's stunk. I love that.
Really big and nobody don't smell him except Cheryl.
And I also love that he was kind of sexually harassing her by and I wonder if he's gonna try to proposition her to sleep with him or something like that. And it's like, not you looking like this.
Because when he smacked it behind, she
looked at him like, wait a minute, what is happening? And I wonder, like, does the guy know that he's a demon? Like, he has to know he's a demon himself. Or maybe, I don't know. Like, I'm so confused.
I'm confused. Like I said, nobody don't see what she see.
Yeah, I'm just like, why is that? What's happening? What does she see? How can she? Maybe that's what the transfusion does. It opens your eyes to real stuff. I don't know. But clearly, Leland knows. And clearly, I think this is another example where they show in this show that there's real supernatural stuff happening. Because clearly that thing is a real thing. Because Leland and her see it. So if that's the case, then clearly there's actual supernatural stuff going on, because sometimes the show likes to make you think maybe there's not supernatural stuff going on and maybe it's all questionable. But I think this solidifies that there's actually something going on. So yeah, I definitely, I think, yeah, like the Matrix, like she took the blue pill or whatever it was, you know what I mean? Or red pill, whatever it's
Where's
supposed to
the
be.
other eyes at? One,
It's on top
two.
of his head. The three. You don't see the three?
I see the three. One, two, three. I thought you said he had five.
He has five. Mom,
One,
you
two,
can't see
three.
that. He has two on the side like this, and there's three like this, like a triangle in the center of his head.
Oh,
There's,
okay.
you
I
see it
see it
now?
now. Yeah. Damn.
I
I
love this character
really
design.
had to look at him. He, boy, whoever played him, he's fat.
I also love that
He's
they
in
have,
love.
like, this is a new office culture, and I love that we're probably going to be seeing this guy a lot, at least for this season. So I just love this whole plot line with Cheryl. It's really, really good, and I'm excited to see how this is gonna, how is Cheryl gonna respond to this. But like you said, like Sabeti pointed out, she's doing cannibalistic rituals, she's praying to an evil doll. Why is she surprised that there's an actual demon? If anything, you think she'd be like, well, finally something
Okay.
real. So, but yeah, I mean, overall, I think that was the main stuff for this episode. I give this episode A+. It's my favorite of the season. Ma, do you have any predictions for episode 6? Now that, Cheryl saw the guy, David's still questioning his faith, Sister Andreas getting to stay around. Do you have any predictions for episode 6 or the rest of the season so far? I know you don't like making predictions about evil because you're just like, I don't know where this is going.
No, I don't know.
So no?
No, I don't.
Well, let me know, y'all, in the chat, but mainly in the comment section down below, what predictions y'all have. But I am loving this season. Episode 5. I didn't see a preview for episode 6. I watched it on Paramount Plus, so I don't know if they did a preview yet. They might release it. It's Tuesday, right? So maybe they'll release a preview like by Thursday or something. Maybe. I usually don't look at previews sometimes for this show because I kind of like being surprised, but we'll see. I didn't see a preview. It might be there though. But I am really loving this so far, and I think they're doing a really good balance of everyone's plot lines, especially with Ben kind of finding his thing with science. Although I think he's a little too eager sometimes to try to discredit the supernatural. So we'll see where that goes to. I think we'll see where that goes to because he's going to find something that he can't explain, and he's going to have to grapple with that. But I'm still digging Ben and everything like that. I don't really believe what he said about I believe that he believes it, what he said in episode 4 about that girl and the Guardian Angel app. But I don't think that's what it was. I think it was genuinely a Guardian Angel. Yeah. I don't think it was some app.
David looked at him and he said that
like, why would an app make something appear on a hospital camera? If anything, I think it's just showing that Ben is a little too eager to disprove the supernatural. Because his faith, if he really is honest with himself, his faith is science. And you're not necessarily supposed to have faith with science. Science is supposed to just basically to help you figure out the world. It's not its own doctrine. If anything, science dismantles doctrines. And I feel like Ben is getting to the point where he really, as though it's like because of his need to not have it be supernatural, he may be too eager to believe just anything that has something scientific tinge to it. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah, I love how it looks like my mask is just like in on the chat and just like talking too.
Yeah, because he's in the back. Like, I mean, I said, she talking about this thing.
I
this
agree.
Thing looking at you.
Okay, y'all. Yeah, exactly. So that even with science, you can't explain everything. And I feel like when it gets to the point where scientists are so about the science, about what they think their science proves, to the point where they can't even open themselves up to it, they're actually doing science a disservice. Because anyway, if anything, science is you're supposed to be the most open-minded you can be if you want to do true science, because science is always about proving something maybe proving yourself wrong. It's about putting forth a hypothesis and genuinely coming to whether or not it's true and being open to the fact that maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So we'll see where that goes with Ben as well. But y'all, this has been so much fun. It's getting a little late over on the East Coast for my mama. She wants to get her sleep, and I gotta get my sleep too. But I always appreciate talking, diving deep into this show with you all, with the themes of faith, religion, demons, and angels, and you all bring such great points to the conversation. So thank you so much for joining me live, and also thank you all to those of you who end up watching this on the replay. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate you watching in general. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe if you haven't, because subscriptions are great and it helps build the community of all of you that I talk to, which we really appreciate. Yes, I love this space. I love this space too. I love being able to chat with you all about this show as well. Yeah, thank you, Sveti. Thanks, Josh. I love the mask too. My mom doesn't,
Thank
but it's
you.
okay. But okay, y'all. Thanks, Felix. Thumbs up. Yes. Thanks, Promethean. Thank you all. Thank you, Promethean Flame. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. It's always great talking with y'all about this show. I love this show and I love this community. So, okay. So be safe for the rest of the week, y'all. Stay safe. Stay chill out there, and don't pick up any weird sigils. You know, they might be part of a demon house. So, thanks, Josh. All right. Keep it creepy out there, y'all. Talk to you later.